What you're looking at here is a reframing of what ADHD actually is, and just as importantly, what it isn't. ADHD is not a deficit of ability. It's a difference in how the brain regulates itself. Specifically, it affects how the brain activates, prioritizes, and sustains attention and behavior over time. At a neurobiological level, this is driven by altered dopamine and noradrenaline signaling, particularly in networks involving the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for control, planning, and decision-making. So in real life, this doesn't show up as simply poor focus. Instead, it shows up as inconsistency. Attention can be strong in the right conditions, but unreliable overall. Starting tasks, especially low-reward or routine ones, can feel disproportionately difficult. There's often a distorted sense of time, shifting priorities, and variability in impulse and emotional control. Now, the term attention deficit hyperactivity disorder doesn't fully capture this. Attention isn't missing, it's dysregulated. Hyperactivity, particularly in adults, often becomes internal restlessness rather than visible movement. And most importantly, the label doesn't reflect the core issue, which is difficulty regulating performance in real time. So a more accurate way to understand ADHD is as a neurodevelopmental difference in self-regulation. It's a condition where the brain struggles to consistently deploy attention, effort, and control when they're needed, not because the person lacks ability, but because the regulation system itself is unreliable. And that leads to the key message. ADHD is not about intelligence or capability. It's about how reliably the brain can regulate itself, moment to moment. This slide provides a brief overview of how ADHD affects the brain and how treatment helps. Starting on the left, ADHD involves lower levels of dopamine and noradrenaline in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for attention, motivation, and control. When these levels are reduced, it becomes harder to focus, get started on tasks, and regulate behavior. This links to the next section, top-down control. The frontal brain normally acts as a control system, helping to guide attention and behavior. In ADHD, this control is weakened, which leads to distractibility, impulsivity, and a sense of restlessness. The key point is shown in the middle. ADHD is not a lack of ability. It is a performance regulation problem. The brain struggles to activate and stay engaged, especially for tasks that are not immediately rewarding. The next section shows how stimulants help. These medications increase dopamine and noradrenaline, improving brain signaling in the prefrontal cortex. This strengthens control and makes it easier to direct attention and behavior. Finally, this leads to the real-world effects: better focus, easier task initiation, reduced impulsivity, and a greater sense of calm. The overall message is that ADHD is a brain-based difference, and treatment works by restoring balance and improving control. This diagram shows the core brain circuits involved in ADHD, focusing on how dopamine and noradrenaline regulate communication between the frontal brain and deeper structures. Starting on the left, ADHD is best understood as a catecholamine dysregulation, meaning altered signaling of dopamine and noradrenaline, particularly in the prefrontal cortex. This area is responsible for executive functions such as attention, planning, and inhibition. Noradrenaline supports alertness and sustained attention, while dopamine is critical for motivation, reward processing, and task initiation. When these systems are underactive, It leads to the executive dysfunction shown below: difficulty starting tasks, maintaining attention, inhibiting responses, and managing time. At the centre of the diagram is the basal ganglia, particularly the striatum, which acts as a decision and gating system. It determines whether an action should go ahead or be suppressed, often described as go and no-go pathways. Just below this is the thalamus, which acts as a relay and gatekeeper back to the cortex. It receives input from the basal ganglia and filters which signals are allowed to return to the prefrontal cortex. So the system works as a loop. The prefrontal cortex sends signals down, the striatum evaluates and gates them, and the thalamus sends the approved signals back up. This is known as the cortico-striato-thalamo-cortical loop, and it underpins what we call top-down control, the brain's ability to regulate attention and behaviour. In ADHD, this gating system is impaired and inconsistent. Signals are not filtered reliably, which leads to noisy or unstable communication back to the cortex. As a result, the prefrontal cortex struggles to maintain control. This explains the behavioural effects shown on the right: distractibility, impulsivity, restlessness, and emotional reactivity. Also shown is the reward system, particularly involving limbic structures like the nucleus accumbens. Because baseline dopamine signalling is lower, the brain tends to seek novelty, urgency, or stimulation to compensate. Finally, the substantia nigra is included as a key dopamine source projecting to the striatum. Importantly, it is not damaged in ADHD, but it forms part of the wider dopamine network that is functionally dysregulated. The key message is that ADHD arises from impaired regulation within these interconnected circuits, particularly the gating and feedback loop between the striatum and thalamus, leading to reduced top-down control from the prefrontal cortex. This slide explains how stimulant medications work in ADHD, focusing on two key proteins in the brain, DAT and NET. Starting on the left, DAT stands for dopamine transporter and NET stands for noradrenaline transporter. These sit on the presynaptic neuron and act like clearance pumps. Their job is to remove dopamine and noradrenaline from the synapse and bring them back into the neuron, effectively switching off the signal. In ADHD, this system is particularly important because, as shown in the next section, there are relatively low levels of dopamine and noradrenaline activity in the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain responsible for attention, motivation, and executive control. When these neurotransmitters are low, people experience difficulty focusing, initiating tasks, and regulating behaviour. All stimulant medications target this system. As shown in the centre of the slide, they increase both dopamine and noradrenaline in the prefrontal cortex. Dopamine supports motivation, reward, and task initiation, while noradrenaline supports alertness, sustained attention, and cognitive effort. Together, this improves top-down control, the brain's ability to regulate attention and behaviour. The key difference lies in how they do this. Looking at methylphenidate, it works by directly blocking DAT and NET. This prevents the reuptake of dopamine and noradrenaline, meaning they stay in the synapse longer. The result is a steady, controlled increase in signalling. Importantly, this is a pure reuptake inhibition mechanism. In contrast, amphetamines, such as lisdexamfetamine and dexamphetamine, work in a more complex way. They enter the neuron via DAT and NET, then increase the release of dopamine and noradrenaline from inside the neuron. They can also reverse the direction of these transporters. So instead of clearing neurotransmitters, the transporters actually push them out into the synapse. This leads to a stronger amplification of signaling. So while both classes act on the same transporters, DAT and NET, and increase the same neurotransmitters, their mechanisms differ. Methylphenidate blocks the vacuum. Amphetamines block the vacuum and turn on the tap. Clinically, despite these differences, both lead to the same outcome: improved attention, reduced distractibility, better task initiation, and stronger executive control. The key takeaway is that these medications are not simply stimulating the brain, they are normalizing a system that is underactive in ADHD, particularly in the prefrontal cortex. This slide explains how stimulant medications work in ADHD from the level of brain chemistry through to real-world clinical effects. Starting on the left, we have the two main medications, methylphenidate and lisdexamfetamine. Although they are different drugs, they ultimately target the same underlying problem in ADHD: low activity of dopamine and noradrenaline, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, which controls attention and executive function. Moving to the center, this is where the core neurochemical effects are shown. Both medications increase dopamine and noradrenaline in the synapse. Dopamine is involved in motivation, reward, and task initiation, while noradrenaline is crucial for alertness, sustained attention, and cognitive effort. They do this in slightly different ways. Methylphenidate mainly works by blocking reuptake, meaning it stops dopamine and noradrenaline from being cleared away. Lisdexamfetamine, once converted to dexamphetamine, also increases the release of these neurotransmitters from inside the neuron. Despite different mechanisms, the shared outcome is the same: more available dopamine and noradrenaline where it matters. This leads directly to the brain level effect shown on the right. With more of these neurotransmitters available, the prefrontal cortex functions more effectively. Neural signaling becomes clearer, what we call an improved signal-to-noise ratio, and this strengthens top-down control, meaning the brain can better regulate attention, behavior, and impulses. The bottom left explains an important clinical concept: why stimulants calm ADHD rather than overstimulate. In ADHD, the brain is relatively under-aroused at baseline. This under-arousal drives behaviors like distraction or sensation-seeking as the brain tries to compensate. Stimulants don't push the system beyond normal. They bring it up to an optimal level, which results in greater calmness, better focus, and reduced need for external stimulation. This then translates into the clinical outcomes shown in the center bottom: improved attention, better task initiation, reduced distractibility, and less impulsivity or restlessness. Finally, on the right, the slide addresses addiction risk. Therapeutic stimulants, when prescribed appropriately, have a slow onset and steady release, meaning they do not produce the rapid dopamine spikes associated with addictive drugs. This is why their addiction risk is low in clinical use and very different from substances like cocaine, which produce fast, intense dopamine surges. This slide explains the genetic foundations of ADHD. ADHD is one of the most heritable neurodevelopmental conditions, with heritability estimates in the region of 70 to 80%. This means that a large proportion of the differences we see in attention, behavior, and regulation are influenced by genetics. Importantly, ADHD is not caused by a single gene. It is what we call a polygenic condition. Many genes each contribute small effects, and together they influence how the brain develops and functions. These genetic influences particularly affect key systems in the brain. They shape dopamine signaling, which is involved in motivation and reward. They also affect noradrenaline signaling, which supports alertness and sustained attention. And they influence how well the prefrontal cortex develops and connects with deeper brain structures. The overall result is a brain that can function very well in the right conditions, but is less consistent in how it activates and regulates itself. It may be more sensitive to reward, stimulation, and context. So at its core, genetics help explain why ADHD is not about ability. It is about variability in how the brain is regulated. This slide focuses on how ADHD presents within families and what that means clinically. ADHD tends to run strongly in families. It is very common to see similar traits in parents, siblings, or children. Sometimes these are formally diagnosed, but often they are recognised more informally. For example, as patterns of disorganisation, impulsivity, or difficulty with routine. However, the way ADHD presents can vary significantly. In childhood, it may appear as hyperactivity and impulsivity. In adulthood, it more often shows up as inattention, internal restlessness, or emotional reactivity. The severity and presentation are shaped not just by genetics, but also by environment, life demands, and the coping strategies a person develops over time. It's also important to emphasize that genes are not destiny. Genetics create a predisposition, but brain function remains modifiable. This is why treatment can be so effective. Medications and structured support target the same systems influenced by genetics, particularly dopamine and noradrenaline pathways and prefrontal control networks. So the key message here is that ADHD is not caused by lack of effort or poor parenting. It reflects inherited differences in how the brain is wired and regulated, and those differences can be understood and effectively supported.
Born wiggling, lived wiggling, still wiggling, no sign of stopping. Yeah, hyperactivity's a lifetime subscription. Teacher said sit still, but I was halfway up the wall, legs bouncing like a drum line in the school hall, hands